Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 9, titled Rebel Without a Clue. This is the final podcast that I am doing for 2022. And when I come back, I'll be back with my co-host Stacy covering the new Quantum Leap reboot, with the new episode titled Fellow Travelers. The episode's description reads as follows. As a member of a motorcycle gang, Sam has to keep a young woman from going on the road. The episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr., whose last work was the prior episode, The Great Spontaneity, and next, he will handle the episode 8.5 Months. The episode was written by Donald P. Belzerio and Randy Howland, who last had a hand in writing Pool Halls Blues. This is Randy Howland's last work in the series. The episode takes place on September 1st, 1958, and originally aired on November 30th, 1990. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode in question, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you are on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel where additional content can be discovered, Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and as well as subscribing to my channel. Couple of trivia notes for this one. The episode's title is a reference to the James Dean film Rebel Without a Cause. As far as I can tell, there is no thematic connections between that film and this episode. According to owlsplace.com, Scott Bakula learned from Diamond Farnsworth how to ride a motorcycle in about 30 minutes. One of the co-stars in this episode, Josie Bissett, was named the 50th most beautiful people in People's Magazine in 1996. As far as this episode is concerned, it's not very good. It's pretty mediocre, firmly in the okay territory, veering towards bad. Stacy elected not to do this episode with me, as she isn't a fan of it, and I can't really blame her, because this episode, for the most part, doesn't really offer much to talk about. The prior episode, The Great Spontaneity, I'm pretty sure I already screwed that up a bunch of times already, but we're going to move on. That episode was no masterpiece, but it offered plenty of interesting things to say. Not so with this episode. I would probably call this episode the weakest of the season. Sam leaps in, finding himself on a motorcycle in the middle of a biker gang, and instantly veers off and crashes, nearly taking out some of his gang with him. Oh boy! When we come back from the credits, we are joined by an amused Dylan, played by Diedrich Bader, the leader of the gang. Bader is probably the most famous of the actors that appear in this episode, going on to star in 233 episodes of The Drew Carey Show. He also appeared in the movie Napoleon Dynamite, Office Space, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, as well as the recent Al Yankovic biopic as the narrator. And that was something that was pointed out to me by Adam and Stacy, who had recently watched that biopic, which, by the way, is pretty amusing. But if you're going into that expecting to see something about Al Yankovic's life that's true, you should probably look somewhere else. It's more of a parody of a biopic than anything else. While Dylan is amused, Mad Dog, not so much. He's played by Mark Boone Jr., who has 161 acting credits, including a brief turn in the movie Memento as a hotel manager who takes advantage of the lead character's disability in that movie. Specifically, he had memory problems and had no short-term memory of any kind. And that was a pretty famous Christopher Nolan flick, one of his first directorial stints that put him on the map, though it was not his first film. Anyway, he also appeared in Batman Begins, which is curiously another Christopher Nolan picture, as well as 30 Days of Night. He isn't amused by Sam's antics and wants to attack him, but Dylan's girlfriend Becky, played by Josie Bissett, doesn't want Sam harmed, so Dylan doesn't allow it. Josie Bissett, in addition to being one of the 50 most beautiful people in 1996, also has 40 other credits, including a regular on Melrose Place and The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Mad Dog doesn't beat the crap out of Sam, but he does cut his fuel line, so he'll have to walk to the diner by himself with a bike that is less than functional. They are all going to that diner and will wait for him. Al makes his first appearance at the 5-minute and 22-second mark, who of course has knowledge of the bikes, leading Sam to ask the question we as viewers frequently have about Al. Is there anything this man hasn't done? Apparently, the answer to that question is he never performed the wild mambo on a bike. Not for lack of trying, I'm sure, from Al. What is Sam here to do? Al doesn't know. What else is new? Apparently, Sam has a drawing of Dylan's girlfriend, Becky. Someone has a crush. Shane, who he's left into, is the new guy and is the gang clown. So, apparently, driving off the road is on brand for him. Al waxes poetically about being a biker before leaving, and he says, "Never know what will be around the next corner." Sam counters with, "Probably a head-on with a semi," and we have a cute cut to a semi-truck passing by that Sam is not getting hit by. Well, phew, that would not make for a great series finale. Not that the one we actually got was any better. Cut to the diner where we see Teddy Wilson serving the unruly bikers. Teddy's face should be familiar, as he's played by Ernie Tyler, who we last saw in Pool's Hall's Blues. Oddly, that's the second connection to that episode, the first, of course, being the writer of this episode, Randy Holland. This is Ernie Tyler's last appearance on the series. Teddy's story is actually a pretty good one and a pretty affecting one, and of course, Ernie Tyler is pretty good in this episode, as he was in Pool's Hall's Blues. And I think if his story had been more central to this episode, we would have had a better episode. But alas, that was not to be. Sam enters the diner and is forced to jug down a pint of beer. And really, it's not very much beer in that pitcher that he's forced to drink. It seems like, I don't know, it seems like someone who was maybe at college could do that very, very easily, as it's not really chugging very much. Dylan joins his girlfriend, who's writing one of her stories. They get into a conversation which somewhat awkwardly leads into Dylan having served in the military, something that he is clearly troubled by. One thing we definitely do gather is that Dylan is not a deep thinker and isn't really as smart as Becky is herself. Dylan ends up talking to Teddy, and he would be better off if he hadn't. Teddy reveals his missing in action son, who's been missing for 5 years, but he still holds out hope. It's the only thing keeping him alive. He also mentions a bike, a pretty fancy bike, that Dylan takes an interest in, wanting to buy it, but Teddy refuses. Mad Dog discovers Sam's picture of Dylan's girlfriend. He calls Dylan's attention to it, but all Dylan says is, "Not bad." Mad Dog was clearly trying to cause problems here, but in this specific instance, he was not successful. Mad Dog decides he wants a picture done, and Sam draws him as some kind of dog. Kind of resembles Goofy, actually. This doesn't please Mad Dog, as he once again wants to fight. Dylan so far seems like the cool head, but that is just an illusion. Al appears to tell Sam what he's there to do, which is to save Becky from being stabbed to death. In the diner, Becky plays waitress for some reason and gets made fun of by Mad Dog. Dylan reveals he intends to find and steal the bike. Becky goes for a walk, and Sam goes with her, which is not something that goes unnoticed by the gang. Sam learns that Becky's mom committed suicide, and her dad was abusive and also died. We learn the inspiration for her being with the gang, which is reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I misremembered the author in this episode that was actually central to the episode as J.D. Salinger, who wrote Catcher in the Rye for some strange reason. She thinks to live life and to be a writer, she needs to be with Dylan on the road. But Sam tries to talk her out of it. Bakula's performance here and throughout the episode is not particularly great. This is not one of his better episodes. But then again, this episode isn't really great for anybody. Right at this moment, the rest of the gang shows up, and Sam tries to play it as a joke. Right at that moment, the rest of the gang shows up, and Sam tries to play it as a joke, but he insists that Becky needs to stay. Mad Dog pushes Sam close to the edge of the cliff, but then stops under the direction of Dylan, and they all leave without him. Sam goes back to Teddy to have him help him fix the fuel line. Teddy reveals that the bike that belonged to his son is underneath a sheet, and not, as he told Dylan, at his uncle's house. His son comes up again, and Al reveals that his remains will be returned to the U.S. in a couple years, and months later, Teddy died, probably of broken heart syndrome. Sam somehow knows where Dylan is headed, and is determined to go and get Becky. As it turns out, the place they went to is where Becky died. Becky and Dylan are in an argument over stealing Teddy's son's bike, which he clearly wants to do. He's drunk and getting abusive, and about to rape her, while being egged on by the members of the gang when Sam shows up to rescue her. They go back to Teddy's, which isn't necessarily a super great idea, as that's the first place they look, but Teddy is ready with a shotgun, telling him that he's going to call the cops because Sam stole the bike and drove somewhere else. The gang goes after him, and this is merely a ploy to get the gang away from there. I'm surprised it doesn't work, because, I don't know, it would seem like they could search for Sam endlessly and never find him. I don't know why they would think that he would go back to Teddy's. Sam wants to leave and take Becky with him, but she won't go. She's making excuses for Dylan. He was just drunk. Classic abuse victim behavior. Teddy offers her a shower and a room for the night, hoping that maybe a night's rest will make her get some sense into her head. He doubts it, but one can hope. Sam is in the room Teddy offered him, and discovers presents to his son, both birthday and Christmas presents. Becky joins him, and the music and acting in this scene is just all wrong. It doesn't fit the mood at all. Just generally, this episode was not really done all that well, and I'm not sure why that is. James Whitmore Jr. has put in some good work into this series, and I'm not sure why this episode just feels so lifeless. Sam tries to convince Becky to leave. She again makes excuses for Dylan. The war, him being drunk. These things do not excuse Dylan's behavior, but once again, this is classic abuse victim behavior. Sam draws a connection between the abusive father to Dylan and spells out the pattern, but Becky doesn't want to hear it. Sam talks to Al and reveals that Becky talks about Jack Kerouac's On the Road like it was the Bible. After talking about a transformative figure that he was, Al reveals that he's just 10 minutes down the road. Well, that's certainly convenient. Sam decides the only person who can make Becky think differently is the author himself. That's kind of a casually nutty thing to use a famous author as a plot point in an episode. The series doesn't usually do that. Its kisses with history are usually smaller throwaway moments, at least until we get to season 5. Sam goes to Jack and tries to convince her to talk to Becky, who Jack doesn't see as his problem. And really, he has a point. How can he be held responsible for the way everyone responds and ultimately acts upon his words? He's played by Michael Brian French, and his 69 acting credits include an episode of Bones, 24, and Breaking Bad. Sam goes to Teddy's, seemingly empty-handed, and once you know it, Dylan is waiting for him with the gang. They terrorize Teddy. Mad Dog rides on his son's bike and then pushes the old man down when he gets upset, which makes Sam mad. The gang lets Sam go to fight Mad Dog, and Sam makes quick work of him. But now Dylan wants to fight him. This fight is a little harder, lasts longer, but ultimately Sam prevails. The rest of the gang is scared off, and the sequence is really not all that well done. Like I said before, Whitmore has done good work generally in this series, and indeed in his career. This is not an example of his finest work. Al tells Sam that Dylan and Mad Dog hook up in jail, and when Sam asks about Becky, he doesn't know. No information. Now, that's not necessarily ominous news. Teddy says to Becky he guesses she'll be going home now, but nope, she will not be. Sam suggests Teddy could use a new waitress. She doesn't want to do that either. She needs to stay on the road. And who should pop in but Jack Kerouac himself? Sam knows how he ended up there, but Becky sure doesn't. It's kind of funny when your hero just casually strolls into the room. Oh, look, it's Scott Bakula. Just kidding. Oh, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Anyway, he gives an inspiring speech and says that sometimes it is okay to stay, that there are stories to be written about staying in place as well. And this convinces Becky to stay and to be Teddy's waitress. Their friendship is good enough that she helps him through the news of his son's death and is still alive in the future. And Sam weeps. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. Kind of aggressively mediocre. Not great acting, though it has its moments here and there. Less than stellar musical choices, some iffy directing, and when it comes down to it, not a lot actually happens in this episode. It has its moments, including the final scene of the episode, which is a pretty big standout, but otherwise, this episode is pretty skippable. That's all I got for you for this video. If you like this podcast and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can join my Corman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions,